Hello. Today I'm looking at a wine that I hope is going to be a great quality and great value wine from Bordeaux, from the Medoc. The wine I'm looking at is the 2019 vintage of Chateau Poujeaux from Moulis en Medoc. It's a very young wine, so we'll have to make allowances for that. But Poujeaux, highly respected. Until 2003, when the classification was abolished, it was one of the Cru Bourgeois Exceptionnel, so the highest quality level that you can have in Bordeaux without being a class growth. And I think many people felt that it frequently challenged the lesser class growths in terms of quality. However, that classification was abolished, and thus it can't use it anymore. There's quite a long history here. Poujeaux is noted to have existed in the 16th century when it belonged to somebody called Gaston de Lille, and Gaston also owned Chateau Latour, so he had one or two decent estates. After he sold it, it passed through a number of hands, and it was divided up and had become fragmented until 1921, when the Thiel family bought the estate, bought all the sections of the estate and reassembled it, and they ran the property until 2008, and I guess they were the people who had it classified as a Cru Bourgeois Exceptionnel, and I think the wine had a reputation for being high quality, very correct, quite long-lived, rather traditional style of Bordeaux. But in 2008, the estate was bought by the Cuvelier family, and they also owned Chateau Clod Fourtet in St Emilion, and were able to invest both time and money in the property. So a young man, Mathieu Cuvelier, took over as the manager, and one of the things he did was employ Stéphane Derenoncourt, well-known consultant, to advise them as to how to improve quality. They rebuilt the cellars, they revitalised the viticultural practices, they've become pretty much organic, they cut yields, and some of the approaches in terms of winemaking were introduced to try and soften the wine a little, to make it a bit more accessible for consumers. So this wine in particular, let's talk about. We're talking about vineyards that Moulis is Moulis en Medoc, to give it its full title, is a commune inland of places like Coussac and Arsin, in the Medoc, in a lower lying area of ground between Margaux to the south and Saint-Julien to the north. But it's also that bit inland. The soils there tend to be more clay and limestone and less gravel, but actually Poujeaux has some exceptional outcrops of Gunsian gravel there, so quite warm terroir relative to the rest of the appellation. The fruit for this is entirely hand-picked into small baskets. There's a lot of sorting goes on, both manual, sort of by hand, and also using mechanical optical sorters to remove fruit that is either damaged or incorrect colour or incorrect size. So quite a lot of effort going in there. The wine ferments and does its malolactic conversion in tank. And they have a selection of tanks, both concrete, I believe, stainless steel, and possibly some epoxy even, but those may have gone now. It then goes into oak to age for a year. Of that oak, they've pulled back a little on the amount of new oak they've used. It used to be about 50%, now we're using about 33%. One of the things that presumably under Stéphane Derenoncourt's advice they've done to try and make the wine more approachable is to do an amount of whole berry fermentation, so that you're not crushing up the berries, and that gives a little bit more sort of fruitiness and slightly less sort of firm tannins. You're not exposing the pips, which are obviously a source of tannin, quite as early in the fermentation, so that helps to dial those back just a little bit. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Unsurprisingly, it's deep and dark, almost sort of a black purple to ruby red. I can just about make out the stem of the glass looking down through it, but hardly. Swirling it, there are some tears forming. It's not exceptionally so, and they're not particularly darkly coloured. Actually, I'm surprised at that. The wine has 14% alcohol, it says on the label. So I might have expected a little more. Oh, actually, there are some tears starting to form now. So let's have a look at the aromas and see what. Gosh, as of yet, there's the oak is very much to the fore, but it's a very classic sort of aroma with black fruit. Possibly more sort of ripe black cherry at first, then becoming the more classic sort of cassis notes and slight leafiness. There's a note not quite minty, but more sort of black currant leaf, tobacco leaf possibly, and some cedar notes. The oak is quite to the fore. It's quite apparent at the moment. It hasn't harmonised with the fruit yet. That may take a while. So let's have a taste and see what we make of that. There's good acidity. There's a pretty fair structure. There's some very, very fine tannins and plentiful, but they do have a touch of roundness. They're quite drying and cedary. It's a very young wine. And this has been open for a couple of hours now, but I think could possibly benefit from even longer and being decanted. The black fruit is quite dense. It's quite cherryish at first, black cherry. It's a ripe denseness, and then the sort of the more black curranty notes come out. The acidity's good, but it's not quite lifting the fruit to a sort of a cassis sort of note, that more lean black curranty style. The oak actually, in terms of its flavour, is very well integrated. It's not standing out, but there's a drying cedary note to the tannins that cuts in the mid palate. The wine has reasonable weight. This is medium to full bodied. It's rich. This has got really good concentration. I strongly suspect that you'd be able to keep this for 20 years very happily. I suggest you probably keep it for 7 or 8 at least before broaching it, because although it's got some lovely ripeness and it's got good intensity and depth, it's also got those very firm tannins, and they need a little bit of time to soften. The finish has reasonable length, but it's warm and it's quite rounded, and it's not massively sort of focused and long as you might expect for a wine. Evidently this has got about 60% Cabernet Sauvignon in, with I think about 36% Merlot, and the balance is Petit Verdot, which is quite high for this property. I mean, it's normally more like 50%. That's the plantings, and the vineyard are more like that anyway. And no Cabernet Franc going in to tone it down. I think, to be honest, you can see the quality of this wine, and you can see it's a wine that's built for long aging. And given the style of the wine, it's much more approachable than I expected. But it's still not a wine that's ready to drink at just a few years old. So Chateau Poujeaux, a wine I think that's improved enormously, certainly in the last 10 to 15 years. Offers great value. I mean, this, I believe, ex-tax is about $30 a bottle at the moment. So if you want a wine to put away, to age, and to enjoy over a period of decades, I think it could be very good value. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for joining us, and if you've enjoyed the video, do join us again. Bye now.